spa in the forgotten side of the city, but in that lavender-scented silence, what she found wasn't a brief escape. It was a touch, a man, and a refusal that shattered her from the inside out, because for the first time someone looked at her without fear and said no. But what happened next? No one could have imagined. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where are you listening from. Your presence here makes all the difference. The conference room was buzzing, but Emma Bradford couldn't hear a word. The voices of board members blurred into static, and the dazzling skyline of Manhattan behind the glass wall offered no escape. Her head throbbed, her hands trembled under the polished oak table, and her chest felt tight, as if every breath came with a cost she no longer wished to pay. The assistant beside her leaned in. "Mum, they're asking if you approve the merger." Emma blinked, her gaze distant. "Take me somewhere no one knows me," she whispered, standing up so abruptly that her chair screeched across the marble floor. "Or I swear I'll lose it right here." She didn't wait for an answer. 15 minutes later, her sleek black car slipped away from the city's glitter and steel. Rain had fallen earlier, and the late afternoon light was soft, painting the streets in a golden hue. Her driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror, hesitating. "There's a small place in the old quarter," he said carefully. "Not luxurious, but quiet. Locals go there when they want to disappear." Emma didn't respond. She simply nodded, her eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. They arrived at an ivy-covered building tucked between forgotten brownstones. A small wooden sign read, "Willow Haven Spa." No valets, no marble pillars, just quiet. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped out and walked through the door. A bell chimed above her head. The scent of lavender and eucalyptus embraced her like a memory she didn't know she had. The lighting was dim, golden. Time moved slower here. A woman at the front desk greeted her with a soft smile. "Walk in?" Emma nodded, voice caught in her throat. "We have one masseur available, if you're open." Emma raised an eyebrow. She was used to selecting from 10 therapists, all vetted and briefed, but she nodded again, anything to silence the storm inside her. "Right this way," the woman said. She was led to a simple room, wooden walls, a single candle burning low, soft instrumental music playing. There were no gold accents, no designer robes, just peace. She undressed slowly, wrapped herself in the linen towel and laid on the table. And then he entered. She heard his voice before she saw him. "Good afternoon. I'm Noah." His tone was calm, without urgency, like still water in a quiet lake. Emma turned her head slightly, and for a fraction of a second their eyes met. He was young, late 20s maybe. Tall, with eyes like stormy skies that had seen too much and said too little. His hands were bare, his movements deliberate. Noah placed his palms gently on her shoulders, waiting. Emma almost flinched. She had been touched many times in her life, by makeup artists, assistants, photographers, men in tuxedos who thought money granted permission. But this touch was different. It wasn't demanding. It didn't expect anything back. It just was. He began the massage in silence. His fingers found the knots in her shoulders as if he already knew where they lived. He worked slowly, listening not to her words but to the language of tension beneath her skin. Minutes passed, then more. Emma exhaled deeply. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, her thoughts slowed. Her body surrendered. She felt human again. "You hold your breath," Noah said gently, "like you're bracing for impact." Emma opened her eyes, startled. "I've seen it before," he added, still not looking at her face. "People who live in war zones. Except yours is made of glass offices and million-dollar deals." She almost laughed, but it came out like a sigh. "You don't know who I am, do you?" she asked, surprised at her own voice. It felt softer here. "I don't need to," he replied. That silence. It pierced something deep. Something buried beneath titles, press releases, and legacy expectations. No one had said that to her in years. He moved to her lower back, pressing gently along her spine. "You carry pain here," he said, "but not just physical." Emma didn't answer. Couldn't. The massage ended almost an hour later. She sat up slowly, hair tousled, eyes glassy, towel still wrapped around her. Noah stood by the door, his presence unintrusive. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome," he replied, then walked away, leaving her alone in the candlelight. Emma dressed in silence. When she walked out to the front desk, the receptionist smiled again. "Will you be paying now, or put me down for tomorrow? Same time," Emma interrupted. The receptionist blinked, surprised. "Of course." Outside, the city buzzed on, but inside the car, Emma sat in silence, fingertips still tingling, a strange warmth spreading through her chest. She didn't know why she wanted to see him again, only that she had to. When Emma arrived the next day, the receptionist didn't seem surprised. Noah was already waiting. Their eyes met longer this time. "Rough day?" he asked. "Something like that." He nodded. "Let's get started." But Emma didn't move toward the table. Instead, she turned to face him, her voice quiet, but firm. "I want to ask you something," she said. He looked at her, patient. She took a deep breath. "I want one night, just one. No strings, no questions, I'll pay you $1 million. Silence. It wasn't the first time she had used money to bypass emotion. It always worked. Except now. It didn't. Noah's expression didn't change. He didn't laugh, didn't look offended. "I don't sell myself," he said simply. "Not for any price." Emma blinked, stunned. "You think this is about you?" she asked, almost defensive now. "This is about me, about needing to feel something real, to feel something at all." "I believe you," he replied gently. "But that's not something money can buy." He bowed his head slightly. "Good night, Miss Bradford." And he walked out, leaving Emma alone, staring at the door. For the first time in years, someone had said no to her, not out of power, but out of principle. And it shook her. She didn't know why she couldn't sleep that night, or why the ghost of his touch still lingered like a question she hadn't yet learned how to answer. The day began like any other at Willow Haven Spa. The scent of eucalyptus floated gently through the hallways, and the low murmur of wind chimes echoed outside the wooden windows. But Noah sensed it the moment she stepped inside. Emma Bradford. She moved like someone holding herself together by threads. A tailored navy coat hugged her body, heels clicking softly on the old wood floors, sunglasses hiding eyes that had likely cried on the way there. She didn't speak to the receptionist this time, just nodded once, firmly, and followed the familiar path toward the room. Noah was already waiting. He hadn't expected to see her again. "You came back," he said simply. Emma pulled off her coat and laid it across the small chair in the corner. "I didn't sleep." His gaze softened, but he said nothing. She stepped forward. "And I'm not here for a massage." Noah stood still, as if measuring the tension in the room. She walked closer. "I know what you must think of me," she began. "Some arrogant CEO who's used to buying what she wants." "I don't think that," he said gently. "But I'm listening." Emma inhaled sharply. "I want to offer you something. One night. With me. No contracts, no commitments. I'll pay you—" Noah raised his hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "Emma," she continued anyway. $1 million. Silence fell between them like a dropped crystal glass. Noah stared at her, eyes unreadable. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he took a step back, as if creating a space between them that hadn't been there before. "I don't sell myself," he said quietly. "I'm not asking for love or even affection," Emma replied, her voice trembling despite her attempt at control. "I just want to feel something. Something real. Something that isn't about mergers, stock prices, or expectations. Just for one night." "I understand," he said, and she believed him, but his voice remained calm, firm. "Still, my answer is no." Emma blinked. "Why?" "Because you're not asking for a night. You're asking to escape yourself. And I can't be your way out." Her breath caught. For a moment, all the layers she'd built, CEO, billionaire, power broker, collapsed into silence. She hadn't expected the rejection to hurt, but it did, more than she cared to admit. Noah picked up a towel and began folding it slowly, methodically, like someone choosing kindness over confrontation. "You could have anyone," he said. "You don't need me." Emma shook her head. "But I didn't want anyone else." The silence between them pulsed. "Do you know what it's like?" she whispered. To be touched every day and still feel invisible? Noah looked up. I do, he said. And then, softer, that's why I won't say yes. She stood still, caught in a storm of emotions. Part of her wanted to scream. Another part wanted to cry, but most of all she wanted to understand why she felt this way, why he had this effect on her. I'm sorry, she said finally, her voice a near whisper, for asking like that. You don't owe me an apology, Noah replied. But as Emma turned to leave, the air around them felt heavier, as if something important had been left unsaid. She reached the door, paused, then turned around. You know, people don't usually say no to me. I imagine not. It's disorienting, she admitted, her voice tinged with something between amusement and pain. Then maybe that's exactly what you needed. Their eyes met one last time before she walked away. Outside, Emma stepped into the car with shaking hands. The driver asked where to, but she didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled out her phone, typed in Noah's full name, Noah Miller, then again with variations, Noah M. Spa, Noah Massage Therapist, Noah Willow Haven. Nothing. She tried social media, LinkedIn, public records, license databases. Still nothing. The man had no past, no digital fingerprint, no trace of existence outside the four walls of that spa. It didn't make sense. Emma sat back in her seat, stunned. He was hiding something, and whatever it was, it made her want to know even more. By evening, she'd put one of her best private investigators on the task. He had uncovered the backgrounds of corrupt politicians and offshore accounts for celebrities. Noah should have been easy, but the report she received the next morning said otherwise. There's no birth certificate, no high school or college record, no credit history before 2019. It's like he appeared out of thin air. Emma frowned. Fake name? Possibly, but whoever buried his real identity did it thoroughly. He's either running from something or hiding something very big. Emma stared at the report, a strange mix of dread and fascination tightening her chest. The man who had touched her without expectation was a ghost. 3 days later, Emma returned to the spa again. This time, Noah wasn't there. The receptionist smiled politely. He's off today. Something urgent came up. Emma felt an unexpected twist in her stomach. Will he be back? Tomorrow. She walked out into the rain, umbrella forgotten in the car, and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, lost in thought. She wasn't sure if she was angrier that he'd said no, or that she couldn't stop thinking about someone who didn't want anything from her. Not her power, not her body, not even her money, and that was exactly why she couldn't let it go. What Emma didn't know was that across the city, Noah stood in front of a grave, his brother's. He hadn't visited in over a year. The wind whispered through the trees, and the marble headstone was weathered from time and silence. Daniel, he said softly, I met someone who reminds me of what I left behind. He bent down and placed a white rose at the base of the stone. His fingers trembled slightly. I told her no, he added, voice thick, because I'm not ready to feel again. And yet, I can't stop thinking about her either. He stood in silence, watching the sky. Somewhere between grief and hope, a shift had begun, but neither of them knew yet where it would lead. And somewhere in the quiet distance between them, something had already changed, even if neither of them could name it yet. Emma Bradford had built empires with less curiosity than she now felt for one quiet man. It wasn't love, not yet. It wasn't even desire, at least not the kind she was used to. It was something more dangerous, intrigue, a hunger to understand the one person who had slipped through her fingers and left fingerprints on her soul. She stared at the file again. The investigator's report was thorough, but oddly thin. Noah Miller had no driver's license, no apartment lease, no medical records prior to 4 years ago, no school diploma, no known relatives, a ghost. Emma had paid $10,000 for this report, and it gave her only one answer. He wasn't who he said he was. She stood in her penthouse office towering above Manhattan. Below, people looked like pieces on a board, easy to move, easy to remove. She had conquered rooms full of billionaires. But this felt personal. Her phone buzzed. Mom, said her assistant nervously. "There's something going around online. You might want to see it." A moment later, Emma's screen was flooded with notifications. It was a video, grainy, slightly tilted, taken on a hidden phone. The setting was unmistakable, Willow Haven Spa. Emma was in it. So was Noah. The clip showed the moment she made the proposal, and the exact moment he turned her down. His calm voice, her frozen reaction, the awkward silence. Then it cut to black, and the internet exploded. CO rejected. 1 million nope. Massage gate. The memes were brutal. One photo had her face edited onto Leonardo DiCaprio's Titanic character. "Make me feel something, Jack. I'll pay you." Another had Noah with a Jedi lightsaber. "The massage awakens." Emma threw her phone onto the couch, her face burned, her stomach twisted. How had that moment, so raw, so private, become a global joke? And worse, how had someone been there to record it? An hour later, she was on the phone with Willow Haven's manager. "I want him fired," she said coldly. A pause. "I'm sorry, Miss Bradford," came the voice, calm and oddly amused. "But I don't think that's something I can authorize." Emma blinked. "Excuse me?" "The spa belongs to Mr. William Carter. He makes the staffing decisions." The name hit like a slap. William Carter, the elusive, quietly powerful man who had ties to nearly every industry in the country, tech, wellness, defense, even international politics. Emma frowned. Why would someone like Carter own a tiny spa in the old quarter? The woman laughed softly. "Let's just say he values peace and loyalty." Click. Emma sat in silence. Why would someone like Noah be connected to someone like William Carter? Unless, her eyes narrowed, she opened her laptop and typed in William Carter's name. Photos filled the screen. Galas, charity events, global forums. In one image, he stood smiling in front of a corporate building in Seoul. And beside him was a younger man in a suit, polished, elegant. Emma zoomed in. It was him, Noah. But not Noah Miller. He wore an expensive suit, a designer watch. His hair was shorter, neatly styled. He looked confident, controlled, unmistakably the same face, but the caption told a different story. William Carter and his protege Noah Grant during the South Korea Innovation Summit 2017. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Grant, as in Grant Corporation, the multi-billion-dollar conglomerate run by Jonathan Grant, one of the most feared and respected corporate titans in the world. Her breath caught. Noah Miller was Noah Grant, the missing heir. Later that night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, the city lights casting fractured shadows across her ceiling. Her mind was a hurricane. She remembered the softness in Noah's voice, the calm, the restraint, all of it now colored by a truth she hadn't seen coming. Why would someone born into that much power walk away from it all? What had happened? And why was he hiding now, working in a quiet spa, living like a ghost? Her fingers hovered over her phone, tempted to call. But she didn't. Instead, she typed a message. "We need to talk. You know who I am. Now I know who you are." She didn't send it. Something in her told her that this wasn't just about unmasking a stranger anymore. This was about secrets. His, and now, maybe hers too. The next day, Emma returned to Willow Haven. She didn't book an appointment, she simply waited. Noah appeared from the hallway as if summoned by thought alone. Their eyes met. This time, there was no smile, no pretense. Just two people staring into the storm they had both created. "I saw the video," he said calmly. Emma nodded. "So did the rest of the world." "I'm sorry. Did you leak it?" No. She believed him, not because of proof, but because of his eyes. She took a breath. "Why did you lie about who you are?" Noah didn't flinch. "I didn't lie. I just stopped telling that story." She stepped closer, arms crossed. "So it's true. You're Noah Grant." His jaw tightened. "I used to be." Emma watched him. His face, his voice, his silence, all of it suddenly made sense and none of it did. "You disappeared," she said. "You erased yourself." I had to. Why? Noah looked past her to the candle burning behind her shoulder, then back at her. I'll tell you, he said softly. But not here. Where then? He hesitated. Then finally, come tomorrow, at dawn, to the old train station. No one will be there. It's quiet. Why trust me now? She asked. Because you didn't walk away when I told you no. The next morning, just before sunrise, Emma arrived at the abandoned station, concrete cracked, iron rails overgrown with weeds. The air was cool, the sky still holding onto the last shades of night. Noah stood near the edge of the platform, hands in his pockets, eyes on the distant horizon. He didn't turn when she approached. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said. I am one, he replied. She waited, and finally, he began. But what Noah was about to reveal would change everything she thought she understood. About him, about legacy, and about the silence that follows unimaginable loss. Emma Bradford had faced ruthless competitors, hostile takeovers, and scandal-hungry journalists, but nothing had ever felt like this. Nothing had stripped her dignity so quietly and publicly, all at once. It wasn't just that the video had gone viral, it was how fast it happened. Within hours, her rejection had become entertainment. By the end of the week, it was legend. TikToks reenacting the scene, podcasts psychoanalyzing her emotional fragility, comedians making jokes about the CEO who offered $1 million for a hug. Everywhere she turned, there were whispers, people watching her a little too long. Smirks from executives during meetings, tweets from rivals laced with fake sympathy. She tried to ignore it, tried to be the Emma Bradford everyone feared and respected, but even she wasn't invincible. Especially not when the board of directors called an emergency meeting. The room was colder than usual. 17 men and women sat around the polished mahogany table, and every pair of eyes was on her. One director cleared his throat. Emma, would you like to explain the footage circulating this week? She didn't flinch. It was a personal moment, taken without consent, circulated illegally. Another director, older and sharper, leaned forward. Emma, we've always supported your aggressive leadership style, but when your personal actions damage the public perception of Bradford Enterprises— Public perception, she snapped, or male fragility, because last I checked, men like Elon Musk and Richard Branson do worse on a daily basis and still get invited to summits. A few heads turned. One woman tried to hide a smile, but the older man didn't budge. We're not here to debate gender politics. We're here to protect our shareholders. Emma stood slowly, spine straight. Then let me remind you that in the last fiscal quarter, I delivered a 23% growth rate despite global disruptions. You want to fire me for having a heart attack? Fine. But you won't fire me because I made an offer to a man who had the dignity to say no. Dead silence. Then a slow clap, just one, from Julia Crane, the youngest board member. Well said. The meeting adjourned with no vote, but Emma knew the damage wasn't over. She returned home that night and threw her phone across the room. It shattered, just like her image. She sank onto the edge of the bed, not crying, but not breathing either. Noah hadn't contacted her, not once. He hadn't defended her publicly, hadn't acknowledged the chaos she was now drowning in, and yet she couldn't bring herself to blame him. He hadn't asked to be recorded. He hadn't asked for any of this. She had crossed a line, and now she was paying for it in the currency of public shame. But then came the twist she didn't expect. An email, no sender, no subject, just a link. She hesitated before clicking. It was a photo, grainy, scanned from an old newspaper, maybe 10 years ago. In it, William Carter and a much younger Noah, dressed in an Armani suit, standing in front of the Grant Corporation headquarters in Chicago. Not Noah Miller, Noah Grant. Emma froze. So it was true. He wasn't just a mystery, he was missing royalty. And suddenly everything made sense. His posture, his restraint, his ability to read people like books no one else could open. Noah wasn't a masseur. He was a man in hiding. Emma made some calls, discreet ones, and what she found only confirmed the impossible. Noah Grant had vanished 5 years ago. No press release, no obituary, No scandal, just disappeared. Rumors swirled that he had fought with his father, that his younger brother had died under mysterious circumstances, that he had walked away from billions, and now he was giving massages in a spa tucked behind a bakery. She couldn't stop pacing. Every time she thought she had seen the world at its deepest, another layer peeled back. Who was this man? And what had happened to make him disappear so completely? The next morning, she showed up at Willow Haven unannounced. The receptionist blinked. "Miss Bradford, I need to speak with Noah." "I'm afraid he isn't seeing clients this week." "I'm not a client," the woman hesitated. Then quietly she said, "He left town this morning, said he needed time." Emma's heart dropped. "Where did he go?" "I don't know." Emma turned away, but just as she reached the door, the woman added softly, "He left something, for you." She held out a small envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. In handwriting she recognized instantly. "There are some truths that only grow in silence. If you're still curious, meet me where people forget how to speak. The old train station, Sunday sunrise and N." Emma read it twice, 3 times. Her fingers trembled as she folded it again. Something inside her shifted. He wasn't running. He was inviting her into his silence. Sunday came like a whisper. The train station was abandoned, its bones rusted and forgotten by the world. Moss grew between the tracks. The wind moved through the broken windows like a hymn. Emma stood in the cold morning light, arms wrapped around herself. And then he appeared, walking down the platform. Noah. No disguise, no uniform. Just a man with tired eyes and a story behind every line in his face. They stood facing each other. No words, just silence. Then he spoke. "My real name is Noah Grant." Emma didn't flinch. "I know," she whispered. He nodded. "I left everything," he said. "The fortune, the name, the family. After what happened to Daniel..." His voice cracked. Emma stepped closer. "You don't have to tell me all of it," she said softly. "Only what you're ready to share." But he looked into her eyes, steady, unafraid. "I want to tell you everything." And as the first light of day touched the tracks between them, Emma knew this wasn't about exposure anymore. It was about truth. And the man who had once walked away from power now stood ready to reclaim something even greater. Emma hadn't planned to follow him, but once Noah started speaking, something inside her refused to let go. They sat on a cold bench at the edge of the abandoned train station, where broken tiles told stories and the air smelled of rust and ghosts. The sun rose slowly behind them, casting shadows that looked like they'd waited years for this moment. Noah's voice was calm, but every word carried weight, like he was carefully unpacking memories he'd sealed away a long time ago. "I used to be someone else," he began. "Noah Grant." "Son of Jonathan Grant," Emma nodded. "I saw the photo." He glanced at her. "Which one?" "The one with William Carter, in front of the Grant building." Noah exhaled like she'd named a ghost. "I was 24, he said. "Carter was mentoring me, grooming me to take over after my father. Everyone thought I was next in line. But you vanished." "Yes." Emma waited. She didn't press. Noah's hands curled slightly in his lap, as if bracing for the truth. "My younger brother Daniel was everything I wasn't. Sensitive, brilliant. He didn't want to be in the business, he wanted to be a writer. But my father..." He paused, swallowed. "My father forced him into the company, buried him in corruption. Daniel became the scapegoat for a series of offshore frauds that my father engineered through shell companies. When he finally realized, it broke him." Emma's chest tightened. "What happened?" "He took his own life. Left a letter no one ever read. My father burned it before I could." A long silence fell between them, the kind of silence that wasn't empty but sacred. Noah's voice was lower now. "I tried to go public. I gathered documents, testimonies, proof of what Grant Corp had done. But before I could release anything, I was warned. I was told I would be destroyed and anyone who helped me." Emma stared at him, eyes wide. "By your own father?" He nodded. "He made one phone call and every bridge I had turned to ash. I lost my legal team, my media contacts, even my bank accounts froze for 48 hours. That's when I realized I couldn't fight him from inside the system he controlled. So you disappeared? Noah looked at her then. I changed my name, gave up my inheritance. I walked away from everything except guilt. Emma couldn't find her voice. She'd known powerful men, feared some, defeated others. But this wasn't about ego or war. This was about a son who had tried to save his brother and lost everything. And yet there he was, sitting next to her, solid, present, not broken, just quieter. Why a spa? She finally asked. Noah gave a soft smile. Because touch is the only thing left in this world that doesn't lie. You can't fake sincerity in your hands. Emma looked down at hers, hands that had signed billion-dollar deals, fired people, built legacies, but not once had she thought of them as instruments of truth. Until now. Later that day, back in her apartment, she stared at the old photo again. There he was, Noah Grant, smiling next to William Carter, both in suits, both unaware of what was coming. She zoomed in. In the background, on the glass doors of the building, was the etched logo of the Grant Corporation. It felt surreal, like looking at the ruins of a civilization and realizing one of its survivors had been hiding in plain sight. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message. No name. Just coordinates, and a time midnight. Emma hesitated only a second before grabbing her coat. The location was a private gallery on the Upper West Side. When she arrived, the door was unlocked. The place was empty, except for a single spotlight shining on a photograph mounted on the wall. She stepped closer. It was another image of Noah, but different. Not corporate, not posed. It was a candid shot. He was younger, barefoot, sitting on a rooftop, his head tilted back in laughter, eyes closed. Pure, alive, free. Emma's throat tightened. Behind her, footsteps echoed. She turned. William Carter. The man moved slowly, hands behind his back, like someone walking through memory. I thought you might come, he said. Emma didn't speak. I took that photo, he continued, nodding toward the wall. It was the last time I saw him truly happy. Emma swallowed. Why are you showing me this? Because Noah trusts you, Carter said simply. And because he'll need you soon. Her eyebrows pulled together. Need me for what? Carter stepped closer, his voice softening. Jonathan Grant knows Noah is alive, and he's planning to move. Emma's stomach dropped. Carter continued. He's already started the first strike, targeting Bradford Enterprises, leaking information, corrupting your vendors, undermining your deals. He'll make you bleed slowly, until you're desperate enough to sell. Emma's hands curled into fists. Why? Because he knows Noah cares about you, and hurting you is the fastest way to break him. The silence felt like glass shattering in slow motion. Then we hit back, she said. Carter's lips curved faintly. That's what I hoped you'd say. He handed her a flash drive. Use this when the time comes. What's on it? Proof of everything. Offshore accounts, wire transfers, the paper trail Daniel died trying to expose. Emma stared at it like it burned. This is a war, she whispered. It always has been. Till at night, Emma stood by the window of her penthouse. The city looked different now, not like a battlefield, but like a chessboard. And for once, she wasn't just protecting her company, she was protecting him. The man who had shown her silence could speak louder than power. And maybe, love could be braver than revenge. But the first move had already been played. And in the game of legacy and loss, there were no spectators, only players willing to risk everything or disappear forever. The rain fell quietly that night, tracing slow rivers down the glass walls of Emma's penthouse. Outside, Manhattan pulsed in neon and thunder, but inside, everything was still, like the city had paused, holding its breath. Noah stood barefoot on the marble floor, drenched from the storm. He hadn't planned to come, but when the first contract was cancelled, followed by a second, then a third, he knew. His father had begun. Emma opened the door without speaking. She took one look at him and stepped aside. He walked in like a man stepping into memory. She handed him a towel. Neither of them spoke, until Noah broke the silence. He's coming after you. Emma nodded. He already has. She gestured to a folder on the coffee table. Legal notices, breach of contract allegations, board inquiries, all fabricated, all timed. Noah sat, dripping, and stared at the documents. This is what he does. Quiet destruction. Emma sat across from him. I met William Carter. Noah didn't seem surprised. He told me about Daniel. This time Noah's face cracked, just slightly. His jaw tensed, his eyes flickered. Do you want to know everything? He asked, voice low. Yes. He leaned back, resting his head against the couch, eyes to the ceiling. My father was obsessed with control. Every number, every shareholder, every son. Emma listened in silence. Daniel was soft. He loved poetry. Used to write letters to people he'd never send. He didn't want to be in the business, but I made him stay. Her brows pulled together. You? Noah nodded slowly. I thought I was protecting him. I told him that if he left the company, our father would cut him off completely. He'd have no protection. So I convinced him to take a role, a small one, just until I could take over and shield him. Emma's heart ached. But it was a trap, Noah continued. Our father used Daniel's name to sign deals, create fake subsidiaries. He made him a front. And Daniel found out too late. Noah's voice cracked. I came home one night and found him in his room. The window was open. His laptop was still playing music. A pause. There was a note on the desk. Just 4 words. He looked at her. I thought you'd see. Emma's hand covered her mouth. I begged my father to release the letter. He burned it in front of me. Tears welled in his eyes but didn't fall. I tried to take him down. I went to the press, to the SEC. No one listened. And then Carter stepped in. He helped you disappear, she said softly. Yes, he told me something I never forgot. Noah turned toward her. Sometimes, the only way to defeat a monster is to become invisible to it. They sat in silence, the rain like a soundtrack to pain that had waited too long to speak. Emma reached out and placed her hand over his. It was warm, real, and for the first time, he didn't pull away. In the days that followed, they became something unexpected. Not lovers, not partners, but allies. Emma brought Noah into the inner workings of Bradford Enterprises, not as an employee, but as a shadow consultant. His insights were surgical, his mind a weapon sharpened by years of silence and survival. And more than once, he surprised her. In a meeting with a South Korean investor group, when their translator didn't show, Noah stepped in. He spoke fluent Korean, negotiated a $15 million deal in less than 20 minutes. Emma watched him, fluent, charming, disarming. The boardroom was silent as the final signature was inked. When the meeting ended, her assistant whispered, "Who is this man?" Emma only smiled. That night, as they stood in her kitchen sharing a bottle of wine, she asked the question she'd held for days. When you touched me that first day, did you already know who I was? Noah looked at her, his expression unreadable. Yes. She froze. You knew I was Emma Bradford. I did. Then why didn't you say anything? His answer came slowly. Because I didn't want to touch the CEO. I wanted to touch the woman. Emma's breath caught. You looked like someone who hadn't been held in a very long time. Not for something. Just held. Her heart skipped. Noah. He stepped closer, but didn't kiss her, didn't reach for her. Instead, he asked, "What are you afraid of, Emma?" She blinked. What? Right now. This second. What are you most afraid of? She didn't answer. Not with words. Instead, she leaned forward and rested her forehead against his chest. And in that silence, they both understood. This wasn't just business anymore. This was the beginning of something that neither money nor legacy could control. But the storm hadn't passed. It had only shifted. Because just 3 days later, Emma received an email from an anonymous account. Subject, "You're next." Attached was a dossier, pages of emails, call logs, and financial reports, all doctored to imply Emma's company was involved in fraud. If made public, it would collapse Bradford Enterprises overnight. She forwarded the file to Noah. He replied within minutes. It's my father's signature strategy. Dirty your hands so no one asks about his. We need to act fast." Emma stood at her office window, trembling. "They want me to sell." "To him," Noah replied. "Through a shell company. He'll buy you out. Rebrand it. Wash the blood. You'll vanish like I did." "No," she said. He looked at her. "You'll lose everything. I already lost more pretending I had it all." Noah smiled, just barely. And then he said the words she didn't expect. "Let me take it back." "What?" "My name. My position. The fortune. Everything I left behind. Let me take it back. Not for revenge. For us." Emma blinked. "You'd do that? For me? For Daniel," he said. "And for the future I want with you." But neither of them knew the cost yet. And as Noah began the process of reclaiming his identity, the world that once rejected him stirred like a giant awakened from slumber. Because sometimes the only way forward is to confront the grave you buried your past in and decide whether to rise or be buried with it. The days that followed were quiet, but not empty. Emma and Noah no longer spoke in half-truths. The silence between them wasn't avoidance, it was understanding. A kind of sacred stillness that didn't require performance, only presence. Every morning they met before sunrise. She brought coffee, he brought strategy. Their war wasn't being fought on battlefields, but in emails, boardrooms, and back doors of legal systems built to protect empires like Jonathan Grant's. Noah wasn't just back, he was reclaiming. He moved like a man who had once been trained to rule and had chosen instead to disappear. But now he walked through corridors with intent, reading legal documents like confessionals and dismantling traps his father had spent decades setting. Emma watched him closely. It would have been easy to fall in love with his brilliance. But what undid her was his gentleness. The way he poured tea without asking how she liked it, but always got it right. The way he touched her lower back when she leaned too far over spreadsheets, like a quiet reminder to breathe. The way he never looked at her as someone to be impressed, but someone to be seen. They didn't talk about love, it wasn't time, but it was there. In the pauses, in the way their fingers brushed when exchanging pens, in the way Emma laughed at 2 a.m. over a typo, and Noah looked at her like she'd just rewritten gravity. The Korean investor deal had been a breakthrough. After Noah's unexpected fluency and charisma sealed the $15 million contract, word began to spread. Bradford Enterprises wasn't collapsing. It was transforming, but the board wasn't convinced. They didn't like the secrecy, and they certainly didn't like Noah. At the next meeting, the tension was palpable. Julia Crane, the youngest board member, stood first. "Miss Bradford, it's come to our attention that you've brought in an unvetted consultant, one with no corporate credentials, no professional history, and no visible ties to the business world." Emma smiled slowly. "You're referring to Mr. Miller?" "Yes." Emma turned to Noah, who stood quietly at the far end of the room, hands folded. "Would you care to introduce yourself?" she asked. Noah stepped forward. "Good afternoon. My name is Noah Grant." A pause. Former heir to the Grant Corporation, graduate of Yale, multilingual, former strategist for William Carter's private equity firm, and the man whose brother died trying to expose the corruption your competitors now attempt to mirror. Silence. Gasps. The older board members sat back in shock. A few looked pale. Julia blinked. "You're that Noah Grant?" "I am." Emma stepped in. "He's also the reason we secured the Seoul investment and the man behind the restructuring proposal you all approved last week under the name Project Resurge." Another pause. A ripple of realization moved through the room. "You deceived us," one board member said. Emma's tone was calm, steady. "I protected this company, and I won't apologize for using brilliance that didn't come with a LinkedIn profile." Noah glanced at her then, just for a second, and something passed between them. Not just pride, trust. Later that day, Emma leaned against the conference room wall, shoes off, tie loosened. Noah handed her a glass of water. "You didn't have to defend me." "I wasn't defending you," she said. "I was honoring my choice." He smiled, then sat beside her. "What now?" she asked. "Now we build something they can't take." She looked at him. "Together?" "Yes." The following week, they worked on a joint venture proposal, an ethical investment branch under Bradford Enterprises, with Noah as a silent partner. Emma would present it as a long-term strategy pivot towards sustainability and transparency, language the board could digest without choking. It was smart, clean, untraceable to vengeance. They worked late into the night, mapping out the structure, the brand, the funding flows, and when the last page was printed, Emma stood and stretched. "We just created a $40 million division in 6 days," she said, half laughing. Noah walked over. "We're good together. Professionally," she teased. He paused, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Not only." Her breath caught. They stood close, closer than before. But he didn't kiss her. Instead, he asked, "What are you afraid of now?" She smiled sadly. "That we're building something real, and the world will find a way to ruin it." His response was simple. "Then let's build it anyway." On Friday, Emma was scheduled to fly to Charleston for a major tech summit. It was a perfect opportunity to announce the Ethical Expansion Initiative, but she was hesitant. Noah offered to come. She refused at first. "It's your father's territory." "I know. He'll retaliate. He already has." She hesitated, then agreed, but she set a condition. "We go as professionals, no press, no attention." He nodded. Understood. But nothing about what happened next would be quiet. At the Charleston summit, Emma delivered one of the most powerful speeches of her career, clear, visionary. Ethical capitalism with a human face. She had barely finished her closing line when the moderator interrupted. "Miss Bradford, we have breaking news. Your company's stock has just surged by 12% following your keynote. Investors are responding faster than anyone anticipated." Applause erupted. Emma blinked, then smiled. She looked at Noah. He didn't smile back. He was staring at his phone, eyes narrowed. "What is it?" she whispered. He turned the screen toward her. It was a leaked email from a fake internal account, claiming Emma's partnership with a former criminal had compromised her fiduciary integrity. Below that, a manipulated document tying Noah to an offshore scandal. Emma's knees went weak. "Who released this?" Noah's jaw tightened. "My father." And just like that, the tide began to turn. But what neither of them knew yet was that their next move wouldn't just save a company or protect a name. It would determine whether love built in silence could survive the sound of war. They didn't even have time to celebrate. One minute, Emma Bradford was being hailed as a visionary. The next, she was trending again for all the wrong reasons. The leaked email spread like fire. Anonymous, precise, malicious. It claimed that Emma had forged partnerships with a man tied to financial crimes abroad, and that Bradford Enterprises was quietly diverting funds to untraceable accounts. Attached was a heavily doctored image of Noah Grant, allegedly in Zurich, meeting with a known corporate saboteur. The headline on business news sites read, "CEO linked to disgraced heir in shocking offshore deal." Within hours, board members were calling for an emergency audit. Vendors froze payments. Investors pulled out of 2 upcoming partnerships. Emma's phone didn't stop ringing. And still she stayed calm. But when she looked at Noah, something in her eyes had changed. It wasn't doubt, it was fight. They returned to New York that night in silence. The car ride from the airport felt longer than usual. The city lights didn't comfort her. In the back seat, Emma stared out the window while Noah scrolled through files on his phone. "It's him," he said finally. "My father." "I know. He's sending a message. He's making a mistake." Noah glanced at her. "Emma, you're losing everything because of me." She turned to him sharply. "No, I'm choosing this. Don't confuse that." He paused. "They'll try to remove you. Let them try." Her voice was steel. But later in her apartment, she stood barefoot in the dark, watching her company's stock price fall in real time. And for the first time in years, her hands trembled. The next morning, the board held an emergency session. Julia Crane was one of the few who showed up in person. Most joined via secured conference call. "Miss Bradford," one voice said flatly, "we're facing potential collapse. Lawsuits, media disaster, employee walkouts." Another chimed in. "You brought a liability into this company. I brought a brilliant strategist, Emma replied, and I stand by that decision. He has no formal position, someone else added, and you concealed his identity. I protected a man from a system that nearly destroyed him. You may have destroyed us in the process. The debate grew louder. Emma remained composed, until one director said, "We move to vote for your temporary suspension, pending full investigation." Silence. Julia looked at Emma. "Do you want to say anything?" Emma stood. Her voice didn't shake. "I've built this company from the ground up. Every glass ceiling you've seen me break, I've bled for it. You want to investigate me? Fine. But understand this. If you push me out now, you won't survive what's coming." The vote passed 7-4, effective immediately. Emma Bradford was suspended as CEO. She didn't cry. Not when she cleared her desk. Not when she walked past the assistant who couldn't meet her gaze. Not even when the driver hesitated, unsure whether to open the door for her or not. She only cried later, when she got home, locked the door, and dropped to the floor. She didn't cry out of weakness. She cried out of rage. Out of knowing that after everything she had survived, this was the price for choosing something real. Noah found her hours later, sitting on the balcony in the rain. "You shouldn't be out here." "I couldn't stay inside." He sat beside her. "I'm sorry," he said. She shook her head. "Don't be." "Emma, I would choose you again," she said, "even if it cost me more." He closed his eyes, then opened them again. "I want to fix this." She turned. "How?" He pulled a small box from his pocket, a flash drive. "This has everything, the original wire transfers, the digital trail my father thought he erased, the falsified accounts under Daniel's name." Her eyes widened. "You've had this all along. I was waiting for the right moment, the right reason. And now? Now it's not about vengeance," he said. "It's about protecting someone who believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself." She took the flash drive carefully. "You're going public?" "No," he said. "We are." The next day, Emma and Noah met with Carter in a private room at the top of a forgotten building in Midtown, far above the noise. Carter, calm as ever, reviewed the data. "This will not only bring your father down," he said. "It'll take down 2 senators and a hedge fund." Noah nodded. "I'm ready." Carter smiled faintly. "Then it's time." The exposé was delivered to 3 major investigative news outlets simultaneously, complete with anonymous sourcing, verified documents, and a message from a whistleblower within the Grant empire. The headline the next morning: "Exclusive, Grant Corporation linked to offshore laundering scheme, tragedy, cover-ups, and the silent son who knew." The story went viral. In under 24 hours, Jonathan Grant's offices were raided. Daniel's name was cleared. Political allies distanced themselves. The Department of Justice opened an inquiry, but most importantly, Emma's name was cleared. The fake emails were debunked. The board rescinded their suspension. Bradford stock surged 18% overnight. She returned to the office to standing applause, but she didn't smile, not yet, because Noah still hadn't left the shadows. He didn't attend the press conferences. He didn't step into the light. He watched from behind the glass as the world finally learned what he had carried in silence. And when Emma found him that evening, alone by the elevator, he looked tired, hollow. "You did it," she said. "No," he whispered. "We did." She walked closer. He didn't move. "I should feel something," he said. "But I don't. Not joy, not peace, just numb." Emma placed a hand on his chest. "You will." Then, gently, "I need you to come with me." "Where?" "To the boardroom." "Why?" "Because I want them to hear it from you." "Hear what?" But Emma only smiled. "You'll see." 15 minutes later, Noah walked into the boardroom. Clean suit, steady hands. A room full of the same people who had doubted him, whispered, judged. He stood before them, not as Noah Miller, but as Noah Grant. And he said just one thing: "I'm making a formal offer," gasps. "I want to buy Bradford Enterprises," he continued, "at 20% above market value. Full acquisition, immediate transfer." Emma stared at him, stunned. "What are you doing?" she whispered. But Noah didn't look at her. He looked at the board. This company was nearly destroyed for standing next to me. I'm going to protect it, permanently. One member laughed. You can't be serious. But Carter walked in. Behind him, 2 legal representatives, 3 advisors, and a federal investigator. They all sat down, and Carter said calmly, "He's serious." And in that room for the first time, a man who had once run from everything stood up and took it all back. The boardroom had never been so silent. Noah stood at the head of the table, the man they once labeled a ghost, now undeniable, unshakable, and very much alive. In front of him, stunned faces wrestled with disbelief. Some of them remembered him from years ago, as a boy, as a shadow, as an heir who vanished when power demanded presence. Now he had returned, not to ask for a seat, but to claim the table. "I'm offering to buy Bradford Enterprises at 20% above market value," he repeated calmly, his voice steady. "Full acquisition, immediate transfer of ownership rights to ensure the company can no longer be used as a pawn in private wars." Emma's breath caught. She hadn't known he would do this. She didn't ask him to. She didn't want him to. And yet, watching him now, a part of her saw what she hadn't before. This wasn't just strategy. This was redemption. One of the board members finally cleared his throat. "Mr. Grant, what would you do with the company?" Noah turned slightly, his eyes meeting Emma's. "I'd give it back." Gasps echoed through the room. He clarified. "Bradford Enterprises belongs to the people who built it, the people who stayed when the headlines turned. I'm not here to steal it. I'm here to protect it, from men like my father and systems that reward destruction." Julia Crane leaned forward, visibly moved. "Why now?" Noah answered without hesitation. "Because the woman who leads this company chose truth over survival, and because I'm done hiding." A hush fell again. Then Carter spoke. "If no one objects, we're prepared to finalize the transfer of voting rights, temporarily." Another pause, then nods, some reluctant, some in awe, but all of them understanding. Noah Grant was not a threat. He was the storm they hadn't seen coming. After the meeting, Emma confronted him in the hallway. "You should have told me. I didn't want you to talk me out of it." "You know I would have." "I know." They stood inches apart, the city swirling just outside the glass. Emma shook her head. "You've just bought my entire company." "I didn't buy it," he said softly. "I shielded it." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." She touched his chest. "You know what people will say. I don't care. And if I did," his hand covered hers, "then I'd remind you of the first night you walked into that spa, and how I touched you like you mattered, not because of what you built, but because of who you were." Tears welled in her eyes. "You never stopped seeing me," she whispered. "I couldn't. Even when I tried." The next week was a whirlwind. Noah held his first public press conference as the rightful heir of Grant Corporation. He acknowledged the whistleblower leaks, confirmed the internal corruption, and formally distanced himself from all activities related to his father's empire. "I am not here to inherit power," he told the cameras. "I'm here to build something new, transparent, accountable, and clean." Media outlets called it the corporate resurrection of the decade. Stock markets responded favorably, but none of it impressed Emma. What moved her was something quieter. The way Noah held the door for a janitor on the way out of a meeting. The way he still brought her coffee at 6:15 a.m., 2 sugars, 1 stir. And the way he still gave massages. Not professionally, just for her, late at night, in silence. Hands that no longer needed to heal the world, just remind one woman she wasn't alone. One evening, after a long day of back-to-back calls and new board appointments, Emma came home to find him on the balcony. He was barefoot again, like the night everything had started. Only now, there was no storm outside, just peace. She walked over and slipped her arms around him from behind. "You know," she whispered, "you never told me why you left everything before. What was the final moment? The one that made you walk away?" He hesitated, then turned to face her. "There was a contract on my desk," he said. "My father wanted me to sign off on a merger that would have buried Daniel's name beneath a subsidiary created to hide losses. It was like erasing his existence." He paused. "I held the pen, and I couldn't move. I realized that if I signed it, I would become the man who killed my brother twice. Emma felt a tear fall. So I left, he added. And I thought disappearing was the only way to survive. And now? He smiled faintly. Now I know surviving isn't the same as living. She reached up and cupped his face. And this is life, he said. Finally. But the final act of Noah's reclamation wasn't in a boardroom or a press event. It was in a quiet courtroom in Beijing. There, with the help of international counsel, he petitioned to unlock the last of his seized assets, investments he'd made before disappearing, frozen by legal grey zones his father had manipulated. It took months, but the ruling came through. He was awarded full control of the Grant Trust, real estate and equity shares once buried under shell corporations. Just over 230 million, released and cleared. When the funds were wired, his lawyer turned to him and asked, "What now?" Noah didn't hesitate. "I'm going home." Back in New York, he stepped into the boardroom of Bradford Enterprises one last time. Emma was already there, seated at the head of the table. He placed a document in front of her. It was signed by him. He slid over a small black box too. She opened it. A simple platinum ring. Noah smiled. "I'm not buying the company. I'm giving it back. All of it. Every share. Every vote." She blinked. "Noah, I told you I'd protect it. Now it's yours again." She stood, breathless. "And this?" she whispered, lifting the ring. He walked closer. "This is mine," he said, "but I want it to be ours." Then, quietly, earnestly, no cameras, no witnesses, he knelt. "I love you, Emma Bradford. Not the CEO, not the legend. Just you. Will you marry me?" She didn't cry. She nodded and whispered, "Yes." But as they held each other in that glass room above the city, neither knew that the man who once tore them apart had one final gesture left to give. The boardroom was empty now. The ring still sparkled softly on Emma's finger as she stood near the window, her eyes tracing the horizon where sunlight met glass and steel. She didn't know how long she'd been staring. Maybe minutes, maybe a lifetime. Noah was gone only a few hours, back to finalize the legal handover, to tie the final knots of a life that had once held him prisoner. But in his absence, the silence felt different. Not cold, not lonely, just wide, like the space between chapters in a story you're not ready to end. Emma turned the ring slowly, remembering the weight in his voice when he asked, "Will you marry me?" There had been no grand speech, no audience, no performance, just truth. And maybe that's why she had said yes without hesitation, because for once in her life something felt right, without needing to make sense on paper. She smiled, until a knock came. She opened the door expecting Noah, but found Carter. His expression was calm, but something lingered in his eyes. "Emma," he said quietly, "there's something you should see." They sat in her office while Carter placed an envelope on the table. "Came this morning," he said. "No return address, but the seal is his." Emma didn't need to ask who his meant. She opened it slowly. Inside, a letter, typed, signed, Jonathan Grant, and a second item, a small card, heavy, textured. She read the letter first. "Emma, I never imagined the day would come when my empire would tremble because of touch. And yet here we are. I watched you for months, studied every move you made, and still, I underestimated you. That was my final failure. You were not the weapon I feared. You were the mirror, the one that showed my son who he could be without me. You won. Take good care of him. He was always more heart than I deserved, but perhaps you'll know what to do with a heart like that." Emma's hands trembled slightly. She picked up the card. It was an invitation, a symbolic one word on it, release. She turned it over. A number written in ink, the name of a private trust, and the instruction for the Bradford Grant Foundation. Her breath caught. "He's donating?" she asked, stunned. Carter nodded. "He's dissolving one of his oldest shell funds, transferring the full amount anonymously to the foundation you and Noah announced last week." Emma sat down. How much? 20 million. She looked up. Carter's voice softened. Some monsters don't ask for redemption. They just leave it behind, quietly. That night, Emma met Noah on the rooftop of their building. He had candles lit, music playing softly from a speaker. He turned when he heard her. His smile faded when he saw the envelope in her hand. You got it, he said. She nodded. I wasn't sure he would. He didn't write to you, she said. I know. Emma stepped closer. He wrote about you. Noah's throat tightened. I can't read it, he whispered. You don't have to. She held out her hand. Just come here. He stepped into her arms. And for a long time they didn't speak. They just stood there, holding the pieces of a story that finally felt complete. Or maybe not complete, but whole. Days later, they stood barefoot on a quiet beach in Tulum. No photographers, no media, just close friends, Carter, Julia, and a vow that didn't need a cathedral to be sacred. Emma wore a simple white dress. Noah wore a light linen shirt. They said their vows in whispers, words only the waves could carry. When it was done, they didn't kiss dramatically. They just leaned into each other like two puzzle pieces, finally finding their place. The Bradford Grant Foundation launched a month later. Its mission was simple, to offer second chances to young people written off by society, those who had genius in their hands but pain in their past. They opened their first youth center in Brooklyn. Noah insisted on designing the massage therapy wing himself. He trained every volunteer by hand. Emma would sometimes stand by the door and watch him. And every night, no matter how late, no matter how tired, he would come home, kneel behind her on the couch and press his hands gently against her back. Not to fix her, not to impress her, just to remind her she was loved. One morning, a delivery arrived at their brownstone. No note, just a wooden box. Inside, a muda de cerejera, a cherry blossom sapling, and beneath it, a single folded card. Emma opened it. It read, "For shadow and bloom, from a father still learning." She looked at Noah, who stared at the sapling like it had come from a dream. He said nothing, but later that evening he planted it in the garden, and as the sun set, he sat beside it in silence. Then, softly, almost to himself, he whispered, "Daniel, we're okay now." But somewhere in that silence, the wind carried a different kind of peace. Not the kind that forgets, but the kind that forgives. There were no wedding planners, no luxury resorts, no front-page exclusives, just her hand in his. And the sound of the ocean promising that the world for once could stay quiet. They married on a quiet beach in Tulum, surrounded by a small circle of people who had earned their place not by title, but by truth. Carter stood to the side, hands folded behind his back, a rare softness in his expression. Julia Crane smiled through tears, the sun catching on her bracelet as she held Emma's bouquet during the ceremony. Emma wore white, but not the kind from magazines. Her dress was simple, flowing with the wind. No diamonds, no veil, just skin, soul, and the raw glow of a woman who had finally stopped proving herself to people who didn't matter. Noah wore a loose linen shirt, barefoot, calm. They said their vows not like actors in a scene, but like survivors who had rebuilt their own language from silence and scars. "I didn't know love could feel like this," Emma whispered. "Like rest." Noah looked into her eyes. "You were the first place I ever felt safe." When the ceremony ended, there was no kiss choreographed for a photographer. They leaned into each other quietly. Two lives, once fractured by legacy and power, now folded together into something new, something theirs. The celebration was soft, intimate. A meal by candlelight, laughter that echoed into the waves, stories shared between people who had seen what ambition can destroy and what vulnerability can restore. That night, as the others slept, Emma and Noah walked barefoot along the shore, fingers intertwined. She stopped suddenly, eyes on the stars. "You know what the best part is?" she asked. He turned to her. "No one owns us anymore." Back in New York, the transition was fast. Noah formally returned control of Bradford Enterprises to Emma, keeping a minor silent share under his name, not for influence, but for faith. The headlines were relentless for weeks. Power couple or redemption story? Emma Bradford and Noah Grant rewrite corporate history, from massage table to boardroom, inside the new empire of love and legacy. But Emma ignored all of it, because something more important had begun. The Bradford Grant Foundation opened its doors 6 weeks after the wedding. Its mission: provide mentorship, funding, and emotional support for young adults coming out of foster care, group homes, or juvenile detention, with emphasis on emotional healing and practical business education. Noah insisted they offer massage therapy and trauma recovery classes as part of the core curriculum. "Touch saved me," he said during one of the early planning sessions. "It should be part of the way we save others." Emma had never seen him so alive. Not even during the company's biggest financial wins. He didn't just show up, he led, he belonged. On the day of the foundation's opening ceremony, they stood side by side in the Brooklyn facility. The media hovered outside, waiting for a statement. But inside, the focus wasn't on them. It was on the 22 students in the first cohort, each one hand-selected for their resilience, each one carrying the weight of a story no one had ever asked to hear. Emma walked through the main hall in silence. It smelled faintly of cedar and lavender. The walls were lined with photos of hands, not faces, because here dignity began with being felt, not just seen. She paused at the door to the massage therapy training room. Noah was there, sitting cross-legged on the floor, guiding a girl no older than 16 through the anatomy of the spine. Her name was Kiara. She hadn't spoken to anyone for 3 weeks. Until Noah. Emma watched as he gently placed her hand on his shoulder blade and said, "People will try to shape you, but your hands will always know who you are." Kiara smiled. It was the first time Emma had seen her do that. And in that moment, something inside her settled. This was it. Not the empire, not the spotlight, not the legacy. This was what they were meant to build. Months passed. The foundation grew. A second center was announced in Chicago, a third planned in São Paulo. Emma returned to the CEO seat with quiet power, but no longer with the loneliness that once haunted her office. Noah remained in the background, exactly where he felt most useful. But at night, in their brownstone, he was all hers. They had a rhythm: dinner at the kitchen island, a walk through the garden, and always, his hands tracing circles on her back as she drifted to sleep. He never charged for it, never offered it like a gift. It was just part of who he was now, part of how he loved. Then one autumn morning a delivery arrived. A large wooden crate, no label, no note. They opened it together. Inside, a bronze statue, life-sized. A boy kneeling beside another boy, holding out a book. A small plaque at the bottom read, "For Daniel, and the brother who stayed." Emma covered her mouth. Noah stepped back. It was them. Not in detail, but in truth. And with it, a folded card, written in sharp, familiar handwriting. "Every empire I built turned to stone. But you built something that breathes. I won't come to see it, but I needed you to know. The story changed me too." Jonathan. Noah said nothing, but later that night, he added the statue to the garden beside the now flourishing cherry blossom tree. He lit a single candle and stood there long after the flame had gone out. Because some legacies are inherited, others are chosen, and the most powerful ones are built in silence by hands that remember how to heal. Winter arrived slowly that year, not with storms but with softness. The cherry blossom tree in Emma and Noah's garden stood bare now, its delicate flowers gone, its branches skeletal against the grey sky. Yet it remained, proud and still, as if waiting for something more than spring. Noah passed by it every morning. He never spoke to it, not out loud. But sometimes, after Emma had gone inside, he lingered, ran a hand gently across the bark, closed his eyes, and listened, as if the tree remembered things he was still learning how to forgive. Jonathan Grant never returned. He didn't show up at the foundation's anniversary, didn't send letters, didn't call, but the statue he had commissioned became a quiet centerpiece at the Brooklyn Center. Visitors rarely asked about it, and when they did, the volunteers simply said, "It's for someone who lost a brother, and someone who never stopped loving him." Noah never asked to move it. never spoke of it again. But sometimes when Emma watched him walk past it with the younger students, she'd see him slow down, just slightly, like his heart had to bow before moving on. That winter, the foundation received an anonymous donation of $5 million, earmarked specifically for trauma recovery and art therapy for orphans of financial crimes and suicides. There was no name attached, only a note. Sometimes what we owe the dead is a better future for the living. Emma showed it to Noah. He didn't speak, just closed the laptop and walked to the window. Later, he whispered, "I think he's trying." As the year turned, Emma and Noah traveled for the first time in months. Not for business, not for media, just the two of them. They chose Japan. Noah had always wanted to see the cherry blossoms there, but when they arrived it was too early in the season. Everything was still bare, still waiting. "Maybe we rushed it," Emma said softly, but Noah only smiled. "Or maybe we just needed to remember what things look like before they bloom." One night, in a quiet inn outside Kyoto, Noah sat at the edge of the futon, watching snow fall through the window. Emma stirred behind him. "Can't sleep," she murmured. He shook his head gently. "Just remembering." She sat up and wrapped her arms around his waist. "You're not the boy who ran anymore." "No," he said, "but part of him is still in me. I think he always will be." She rested her chin on his shoulder. "Then love him too." He turned, surprised. "Don't try to erase him, don't try to outgrow him," she continued. "Just love the boy who survived what he wasn't supposed to." Noah looked at her, and something in his chest loosened. Like the last lock in a hallway of closed doors had finally clicked open. When they returned home, spring was waiting for them. And so was something else. A small wooden crate, no labels. Inside, a tiny notebook, hand-stitched in leather. Worn. Quiet. It was Daniel's. Emma gasped when she saw it. There was no note, no explanation, only the initials on the inside cover. DG. Noah opened it slowly. Page after page of sketches, letters, and journal entries from a boy who had wanted to be heard. Drawings of trees, quotes about stars, lines like, "What if love is not a feeling, but a place we return to when we stop performing?" And near the end, a page with a list. People he loved, his favorite music, things he wanted to do before turning 30. None of them happened. Noah sat down slowly, hands shaking. He turned to the last page. It was blank, but in the corner, a single sentence in Daniel's messy handwriting. "If you find this, it means you still believe in me." Emma knelt beside him. He placed her hand over the page, and for a long time neither of them said a word. They had the notebook framed in glass and placed it inside the Foundation's creative therapy room. A sign underneath read, "Your voice matters. Keep writing." Even if no one's listening yet, Noah never said Jonathan's name again, but his gestures remained. A donation to build a greenhouse in Daniel's name. A sponsorship of 10 full scholarships under the Grant Quiet Legacy Fund. An unnamed visitor who once walked the halls of the Brooklyn Center at midnight, leaving behind a note that read, "You raised him better than I did. Thank you." Noah never confirmed it was his father, but every spring he would step outside, look at the cherry blossom tree and place a stone beside its roots. Not a flower, not a plaque, just a stone. The Jewish tradition for honoring the dead, but also, perhaps, the tradition of a son who finally understood that some apologies don't need words. They just need time and space to grow. One day, years later, a young student named Malachi asked Noah, "Do you miss your dad?" They were sitting on the back steps of the center, sunlight casting long shadows across the pavement. Noah paused, then answered honestly, "I don't miss who he was, but I think I miss the chance to become something better together." Malachi thought for a moment. "Maybe you're doing that now. Just on your own." Noah smiled. "You might be right." Later that night, Emma found him in the garden again. He stood barefoot, just like the first time they'd met. The cherry blossom tree had begun to bloom. Soft pink petals danced in the air. He turned to her. "I didn't think I'd ever have peace," he said. "And now?" He looked up. It doesn't feel loud, or bright, or victorious. Then how does it feel? He smiled faintly. Like silence, with someone still holding your hand. She stepped closer and took his. Together, they stood beneath the tree. Wind, memory, forgiveness, and the quietest kind of redemption, the kind you don't win, the kind you learn how to receive. Because sometimes redemption doesn't arrive with applause, but with a silent gesture, a tree blooming where there was once pain, a sun forgiving without words. Noah reminds us that running from pain is not the same as healing it, and that even the most wounded hands can learn to love again. And perhaps deep down, this story also speaks of us. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know. Where are you listening from? Your support is what allows us to continue bringing stories like this.